Good morning, Music Appreciation. How are you? It's nice to talk to you guys. I miss all of you, and I'm hoping that we get back to school soon so that we can get into some of these fun lessons. Today, I'd like to talk to you about the Woodstock Festival. This is one of my favorite lessons that I do with you guys every year. I try to be festive with my guitar pick earrings and my hippie looks. So I tried to do a little bit of that for you today. But since I can't be there with you, I thought the next best thing was to make a video presentation. So today, I'm going to talk about some of the materials that I actually gave to you on Google Classroom. I gave you the PowerPoint so that you can look at it yourself. And I also gave you the worksheet that I'm going to kind of go through together to help you guys with the assignment. But I wanted to make this video so that I could give you a little bit more details about the Woodstock Festival and everything that sort of went on that day or that weekend. It was a 3-day festival, ended up turning into 4 days. And usually when we're in class, I would ask you guys, what do you already know about the Woodstock Festival? Because a lot of you already have some information about that, maybe that you heard from your parents or other teachers or history class or whatever. And normally some of the answers that I get is that you guys say, oh, it was a hippie fest and it rained, so there was a lot of mud and there was a huge, massive crowd of people and there were a lot of drugs and obviously music. And so those are some of the things that sort of come out. And all of those things are true. And we're going to talk about them. But Woodstock was actually not meant to be what it became. It was actually a happy accident, and it went down in history as one of the most famous concerts and festivals of all time. But it actually sort of became that way because of all the mistakes that happened. So I'm going to kind of go through the planning of the Woodstock Festival and talk about the Woodstock guys that you see in this picture. And I know that it's hard to see the presentation from my laptop on this video, but you can go back and look at these pictures later on as you read through the worksheet yourself, if you feel like you still need to do that. Okay, so I'm going to start at the top, but then, like I said, I'm going to kind of give you some details as we go through that aren't necessarily on the worksheet itself. Okay, so what was Woodstock? So we know the Woodstock Festival was a 3-day concert, which ended up rolling into a 4th day, that involved a lot of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, plus a lot of mud. The Woodstock Music Festival of 1969 has become an icon of the 1960s hippie counterculture. The dates were August 15th through the 18th, 1969, and it took place on Max Yosker's dairy farm in the town of Bethel, which is right outside of White Lake, New York. So it did not take place in Woodstock, New York, but I'll explain why it was called Woodstock. So it was known as the Woodstock Music Festival, also known as an Aquarian Exposition, 3 days of peace, love, and music. Okay, so let's talk about these guys that are in this picture. There's actually one of them that's missing because there's 4 Woodstock guys, as I like to call them. So the organizers of the Woodstock Festival were 4 young men: John Roberts, Joel Rosenman, Artie Kornfeld, and Mike Lang. I believe the only one that's missing from this picture is John Roberts. You can look it up and correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe it's either John Roberts or Joel Rosenman that are missing, but Mike Lang is the guy that's right in the center there. The oldest of the 4 was only 27 years old at the time. So these guys were pretty young when they were planning this festival. So John Roberts, who was an heir to a pharmaceutical fortune, which means he basically inherited this money from somebody's pharmaceutical company, he basically got together with his friend Joel, and they were looking for a way to invest the money. So in 1969, they put in the newspaper, in the New York Times, they said, young men with unlimited capital looking for interesting, legitimate investment opportunities and business propositions. So they basically put it out there that they had all this money and they wanted to invest it in something. So, and I believe it was somewhere around like $1.5 million or something like that. So in 1969, that was a lot of money. It's a lot of money today, but it was definitely a lot of money back then. And they wanted to invest it in order to make more money in, doing something kind of good with the money that they thought would be meaningful. So that's when they met up with Artie Kornfeld and Mike Lang, who had been interested in doing something like that. And what they wanted to do was start their own recording studio, which they thought would be a cool idea. So their original proposition, hi guys, sorry about that. The videos are going to be split because I got a phone call in the middle of it. I just turned my phone on airplane mode, so hopefully that won't happen again. Okay, so the original proposition of Artie Kornfeld and Mike Lang was to build a recording studio in Woodstock, New York, hence the name Woodstock. That was where Bob Dylan was living at the time. You guys know a lot about Bob Dylan now, so you know how famous he was. And these guys thought it would be really cool to have a recording studio in Woodstock that would be somewhere for these musicians to come and kind of hang out and record their songs and, just kind of, be like sort of like a jam session kind of studio. And they thought that would make a lot of money. But they figured we don't have enough money to invest in the actual studio, so we need to make more money in order to put towards it. Pretty good idea. So they said, let's have a concert. Let's have a concert where people pay to come in, and we'll try to get all the musicians to play for free if we can do that. And it'll be sort of like a charity thing to all go towards opening up this recording studio. How fun would that be, right? So they planned it. They said the idea kind of morphed into creating a 2-day rock concert for 50,000 people. That was the original estimate of how many people would show up, with the hope that they could raise the money to pay for the studio. So the 4 young men then got to work organizing a large music festival. They found a location for the event, which was an industrial park in Wallkill, New York. I've been to Wallkill, New York. One of my really good friends from college was from there. It's like a dead town. There's nothing there but farmland, but they thought there's a lot of space, right? So they thought, well, we'll have it at this industrial park in Wallkill, right? They printed tickets. It was $7 for one day. Now get that together. You're going to see the list of people that were at this concert. $7 for one day, $13 for 2, and $18 if you wanted to come see all 3 days. You would never pay that much for anything now. It would be so much more money. So the way that they could purchase tickets, now we know we go on StubHub or whatever to buy tickets for concerts. They had to buy them either by mailing in their order form, or they could go to like a local grocery store and purchase the tickets. They had the tickets for sale in local stores. So they started organizing and advertising. And this was some of the, hold on, see if I can get to the next thing. This was some of the ways that they advertised. So they used posters. And if you guys remember, in my classroom, I have this poster hanging up. So the poster kind of lists each day of who's playing at the festival. So that was a really good way of advertising, because you want to put it out there. If you're going to pay this much money for this day, this is who you're going to see. And they kind of had the days themed. So you're going to do a project this week kind of dealing with theming days for a festival. So we'll talk about that later. And then they had other posters like this. And I actually bought that poster that's hanging in our classroom at a record store in Savannah, Georgia. There was this really old hippie guy kind of running this store, and he sold it to me for $20. And he said that it was an original poster from 1969. And I was like, I kind of didn't believe him. I thought like it probably was a copy and, a replicate poster of it. But I was like, $20, hey, that's no big deal. And then come to find out, that guy was like at Woodstock and had, probably actually did have this poster. So pretty neat for $20, I thought. Anyway, so that was how they advertised. So then they went on to organize having food, getting musicians, and hiring security. It takes a lot to plan a whole concert. So they thought, all right, cool. We're getting underway here. This is going to be pretty awesome. Again, remember, they expected 50,000 people. So remember I told you that a lot of things went wrong and they made a lot of mistakes, which is what ended up turning into this historical festival. So we're going to start talking about the things that went wrong. So the first of many things to go wrong with the Woodstock Festival was the location. No matter how the young men and their lawyers spun it, the citizens of Wallkill did not want a bunch of drugged out hippies descending on their town. After much wrangling, the town of Wallkill passed a law on July 2nd, 1969, that effectively banned the concert from their vicinity. Everyone involved in the Woodstock Festival panicked. Stores refused to sell any more tickets, and the negotiations with the musicians got shaky. Only a month and a half before the Woodstock Festival was to begin, a new location had to be found. So they lost the industrial park. The people of Kehl were like, nope, no way are we having all these hippies come into our town and ruin it. So they were like, forget it, we can't do it. Well, this happened like a month before the festival was supposed to happen. So they were like freaking out. So in mid-July, they ended up, because they didn't want to give out refunds because they needed the money, right, to put the concert on. So they said, we're not going to give refunds to pre-purchase tickets yet. Let's try to find somewhere. There was a man named Max Yosker who offered up his 600-acre dairy farm in Bethel to be the location for the festival. He was kind of like, you know what? I love what you guys are doing. I think this is super cool. I'm just going to give it to you. I'm just going to offer it up for free. I'm going to let you have my farm. So that was pretty sweet deal. So as lucky as they were to have found a new location, the last minute change of venue seriously set back the festival timeline. New contracts to rent the dairy farm and surrounding areas had to be drawn up, and permits to allow the Woodstock Festival in the town had to be acquired. Construction of the stage, a performers pavilion, parking lots, concession stands, and a children's playground all got a late start and barely got finished in time for the event. Some things like ticket booths and gates did not get finished in time at all. So here's the thing. Here they are constructing all of these things. A children's playground, because apparently you were allowed to bring your kids to the Woodstock Festival. Don't know that I'd do that. But they didn't build the ticket booths and the gates in time. They were like, well, those will be the last things we do. Big mistake. So as the date got closer, more problems started to spring up. It soon appeared that the 50,000 people estimate was way too low, and the new estimate jumped upwards of 200,000 people. So now there were 200,000 people predicted to come to this. That's a lot of people. The young men then tried to bring in more toilets, more water, and more food. However, the food concessionaires kept threatening to cancel at the last minute. The organizers had accidentally hired people who had no experience in concessions, and so they were a little worried that they couldn't figure it out. So they had to worry about whether or not they could airlift rice as a backup food supply, which basically means they would have helicopters dropping rice on people for 3 days. Really kind of insane, but very hippie. Also troublesome was the last minute ban on off-duty police officers from working at the Woodstock Festival. So they banned off-duty police officers and wanted actual police officers working the event. Well, of course, these guys didn't want real police officers there because, there was a lot of things going on that were illegal. And so the off-duty police officers would have acted as security, but really not have been able to get anybody in trouble. But now that they were going to use real police officers, it was going to become a little bit of a problem for them, but whatever, they were still trying to deal. So let's see what else I got in these pictures on this slideshow. So here's the setup of the concert. So, sorry. Let me go back. All right, so here's the setup of the concert. So, oh no. Oh my goodness, you guys know. Okay, so here's the setup of the concert. So this is basically what the stage ended up looking like. Here's the dairy farm. And all the things that they had to construct. So you could see that it's a lot. It's a lot that they had to put together. And it really took them a long time. And they only had from July to August 15th, like mid-July, I guess they had about a month to put the whole thing together. And they were literally building it themselves. When we get back to school, which hopefully we will, I'll show you some of these videos and you'll see, and you can look them up on YouTube, I'm sure. You can see the construction of these guys actually working themselves. The 4 guys were actually building this stuff with a couple of their friends. So it's like pretty interesting to watch. Anyway, okay, so on August 13th, which was the Wednesday before the concert, 2 days before the festival, there were already approximately 50,000 people camping out near the stage. These early arrivals had walked right through the huge gaps in the fence where the gates had not yet been placed. So again, remember, they didn't put the gates up. So these people who did not prepay for this concert, who were just going to show up and pay at the door, didn't have anywhere to pay, so they just walked in. So now you're talking about 50,000 people getting into this concert for free. This is not helping anybody. These early arrivals had walked right in. So since there was no way to get 50,000 people to leave the area in order to pay for tickets, and there was no time to erect the numerous gates to prevent even more people from just walking in, the organizers were forced to make it a free concert. So they literally advertised, you know what, from now on, the concert's free, just come on in. Another big mistake. So this declaration of a free concert had two dire effects. The first of which was that the organizers were going to lose massive amounts of money by putting on this event. The second effect was that as news spread that this was now a free concert, an estimated 1 million people headed to Bethel, New York. Police had to turn away thousands of cars. It is estimated that about 500,000 people actually made it to the Woodstock Festival. 500,000 people. They expected 50,000. And they got 500,000 people. So no one had planned for 500,000 people. The highways in the area literally became parking lots as people abandoned their cars in the middle of the street and just walked the final distance to the Woodstock Festival. Traffic was so bad that the organizers had to hire helicopters to shuttle the performers from their hotels to the stage. So this was crazy. This was how it ended up looking. So this was how many people were there. I'm gonna pause the video and hopefully I can try to put these together. It might end up being 3 videos. Give me a second, I'll be right back. Okay guys, I'm back. I'm sorry. I've just got so much going on here with my 2 kids and, you know, people doing a million things. So here I am. Okay. So you can see how many people ended up showing up. So if you actually go and look at the PowerPoint yourself, you can see the line of cars. People just parked their cars and like were chilling on their cars and hanging out because they could hear the concert because they couldn't get in. The news article said traffic uptight at Hippie Fest. So there was like so much going on when they were trying to get to the festival. But 500,000 people was way too many people, but pretty cool. So despite the organizers' troubles, the Woodstock Festival got started nearly on time. On Friday evening, August 15th, Richie Havens got up on stage and officially started the festival. Sweetwater, Joan Baez, and the other folk artists also played Friday night. The music started up again shortly after noon on Saturday with Kehl and continued nonstop until Sunday morning around 9 a.m. The day of psychedelic bands continued with such musicians as Santana, Janis Joplin, The Grateful Dead, and The Who, just to name a few. It was obvious to everyone that on Sunday, the Woodstock Festival was winding down. Most of the crowd left throughout the day, leaving about 150,000 people on Sunday night. When Jimi Hendrix, the last musician to play at Woodstock, finished his set early Monday morning, the crowd was down to only 25,000. So you can imagine going from 500,000 people to suddenly 25,000 people. Those are the people that saw Jimi Hendrix play on the last day. He did his famous national anthem on the guitar. So despite the 30-minute lines for water and at least an hour-long wait to use the toilet, the Woodstock Festival was a huge success. There were a lot of drugs, a lot of sex and nudity, and a lot of mud, which was created by the rain, which I'll go through. So I'm just going to kind of finish reading out the Woodstock thing, and then I'll go through the rest of the PowerPoint. So the organizers of Woodstock were dazed at the end of the Woodstock Festival. They didn't have time to focus on the fact that they had created the most popular music event in history, for they first had to deal with their incredible debt of over $1 million and the 70 lawsuits that had been filed against them. That's crazy. To their great relief, the film of the Woodstock Festival turned into a hit movie, and the profits from the movie covered a large chunk of the debt from the festival. By the end of that, by the time that everything was paid off, they were still about $100,000 in debt. So these guys, even though they created the most amazing concert and festival that went down in history, they were in so much debt, it was crazy. So this whole plan to open up this recording studio never happened, but they're pretty famous for who they are. And if you ever get a chance to watch the documentary, hopefully we'll be back in school and I can show you the documentary and we can watch it together. But it's super fun to see, you know, kind of how the whole thing got put together and what it ended up looking like, and watching some of the performances. I'm going to find some of the performances on YouTube and put them on Google Classroom for you guys so that you can watch them. But let's go through the rest of the pictures and I'll kind of explain, you know, some of the things that are not on the worksheet. Okay, so There's another picture of the crowd. Again, it's hard to see it on my laptop right now, but if you go and look at the PowerPoint yourself, you'll be able to see how many people were actually at this festival. Pretty crazy. And this is the stage right over here, and that is the audience, basically. Really kind of nuts. I've never seen anything like that. All right, so the way that they were distributing food, they had a bunch of concession stands and tents and stuff set up. They had local grocery stores kind of donating the food, because once the guys realized how much money they were going to lose by making it a free concert, they kind of thought, we need everybody's help. And there were actually a lot of people in the town of Bethel, New York, that were willing to donate food and to help out, because they were excited about something like this. They thought it was cool, and it was bringing them a ton of business, because the people coming in from all over the United States were going to their stores and shopping and, like, you know, buying stuff. And they thought, well, we should help these guys out, because they brought a huge amount of business to us for in the summer months, which, you know, in Bethel, New York, is not exactly a popular vacation spot. So pretty cool. All right, so let's talk about the drug situation. So there was a lot of drugs at this festival. Not surprising, considering most of the people there were hippies. And, you know, obviously they were smoking pot and stuff like that. And it was what it was. There's actually a pretty cool scene in the documentary where I think it's Jerry Garcia, I forget who it is, that was in the helicopter with two police officers as he was getting, like, flown in, because they had to fly in all the performers because there was no way to get through the traffic. So they had to helicopter the performers from their hotels. It was crazy. And so they brought everybody in, and as Jerry Garcia is flying over, he listens to the cops, and the cops are like, you know, there's a lot of hippies smoking dope down there. What are we going to do about it? And the one cop's like, I'm not doing anything about it. That's 500,000 people. And the other cop's like, well, I'm not going to do anything about it either. And then Jerry Garcia goes, I just realized that we could do whatever we want. This is crazy. So, so, you know, you had all that going on. They were selling acid. You can see in the sign, it says acid is $1. So you had a bunch of audience members just kind of selling drugs here and there. They had these tents set up that they called freak out tents. And basically, if somebody was having like a bad acid trip, they would take them to this tent with other people that were having bad trips, and they would just let them freak out in the tent together, because they figure they're safer in this tent together than they are out in the crowd with everybody. So they took all the people that were freaking out and put them in the freak out tents. Really just insane things going on that day. And then it rained. So you can see in one of this newspaper headlines said, hippies mired in sea of mud. So basically, I think it was the second day that it rained, I think it was the second day that it rained, and it downpoured. And so the entire farm became just puddles and puddles of mud. And a lot of people ended up leaving probably because of that situation. But they had to cover all of the equipment on stage. It was like a mess. And they kind of paused the concert a little bit, which was, I think, why it ended up going into a fourth day, because they ended up they lost a lot of time with the rain. But a lot of the people just had fun in the mud. They were like, cool, let's just, you know, kind of make the best of it kind of situation. So that was sort of a big deal, big thing that kind of went down in history, that it was a mud fest. And then I just have some pictures of some of the performers. And like I said, I'm going to give you a whole list of who was performing that day. You can absolutely look it up. There's millions of websites that talk about this. But this is just some of the pictures of some of the performers. You have Jimi Hendrix over here, The Who, Joan Baez, Janis Joplin, Santana. And, you know, they were some of the big names that day. And it was a, you know, pretty cool concert. Ended up going down in history. So if you have any questions about anything, you're obviously welcome to ask me. There's an assignment that goes along with this, so I'm going to put everything into Google Classroom. Hopefully I can kind of splice these videos together, because I know that I have 3 of them. Otherwise, they're going to be 3 separate YouTube videos for you to watch. But it was really nice talking to you guys. I do miss you, and I hope that we can get back to school soon. And when we get back to school, I plan to show you a lot of these movies and videos and stuff that we're kind of missing throughout these lessons. So hopefully I can do another lesson like this soon with you. But if not, I'll see you soon. Okay, bye.